I think of inspirational leaders, they all share some qualities, but one stands out for me. They all have the ability to see and think beyond their lifetime. I'd like you to think of a scenario. You've just been appointed CEO of a mid-sized company, which is a subsidiary of a larger group. Your long-term career goal is to become the CEO of the group in time. You're reasonably confident that should you perform in your current role, that you will make your way to the next stepping stone role within 3 years. Your KPIs as CEO are heavily weighted to short-term profitability matrix like annual profit targets. And this is because the directors believe that shareholders are also focused on this. 3 months into your role, you discover that some key infrastructure in the business needs replacing at significant cost. If this is not done, the business risks falling behind its competitors in the long term. However, given that it's expensive, you also know that it will have a serious negative effect on profitability, and as such, will seriously impact how your performance is viewed by the board. So you've got a choice to make. Do you make the company, its shareholders, its employees and its customers better off in the long term, but in doing so, sacrifice your own short-term financial rewards and possible career progression? Or do you maximise short-term profitability, your own financial rewards and your career progression, and just leave the problem for the next CEO? What about this scenario? You're a regional manager. You and your team have spent many years building up a team and a brand that is known locally for its long-term values and behaviours. A change in leadership above you has resulted in you being asked to lead your team in a way that conflicts with these values. You know that if you don't do it, the consequences will be that you and your team will be seen as low performers. They will miss out on financial reward, and it may even cost you your job. But if you do it, you run the risk of your team disengaging. You actually could lose some of your best and brightest. And you actually run the risk of damaging the brand that you and your team have spent over a decade building. Thinking of these two scenarios, I'd just like you to pause for a moment. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to tell anyone your answer. But just think, if you were in those positions, what would you do? In many cases, in fact, in far too many cases, the short-term choice is the one that's made. But intuition would tell us that the long-term choices are most likely to produce sustainable success and long-term value creation for shareholders. So given this, why do we see so many examples of what is referred to as short-termism? So McKinsey Global Institute did a study of 615 US-listed companies and put out some interesting research in the past 18 months. But what they found was that 87% of executives and directors feel most pressure to demonstrate strong financial performance within 2 years or less. So not a small majority and not a long time frame. 65% of these executives say that this pressure has got worse in the past 5 years. And 55% of these executives and directors at companies that don't have a strong long-term culture say that their company will defer or put off a major project to hit a quarterly target, even if this means sacrificing long-term value. And often the justification for this is that shareholders want strong year-on-year profit. But the research also said that 75% of investors that hold US stocks are what would be categorised as long-term investors. In addition, they measured two sets of companies. They measured the companies that displayed long-term practices and had long-term characteristics in their behaviours with ones that were short-term across 4 key financial metrics: average company revenue, average company earnings, average company economic profit, and average market capitalisation. Not much different leading up to the global financial crisis, but beyond that, a clear divergence in the lines, and the long-term ones outperformed across the board in all categories. So why the disconnect? Given what the research is telling us, why do we have so many examples of what we refer to as short-termism playing out? When short-term profits are sacrificed in the interest of long-term value creation and the benefits and reasons clearly explained, we actually see some great outcomes. How many of you are familiar with the Amazon founder's letter to shareholders in 1997? Not many, eh? So this was written at a time when the company was in its infancy. Revenues had just increased from 16 million to 148 million. But this letter did not mention at all short-term profits, earnings per share, or shareholder dividends. It talked about the need to create shareholder value over the long term. This was in the opening section. We believe that a fundamental measure of our success will be the shareholder value we create over the long term. That's a pretty bold statement to make at the start of your letter to your shareholders. Because of our emphasis on the long term, we may make decisions and weigh trade-offs differently than other companies. We will continue to make investment decisions in light of long-term market leadership considerations rather than short-term profitability considerations or short-term Wall Street reactions. This letter went on to talk about the need to build long-term relationships with customers. It used phrases such as obsessing over customers. It provided the shareholders with measures of repeat custom, not customer growth. It talked about infrastructure and explained clearly where profits had been reinvested, while signalling that this would continue into the future. This letter sent a really clear message to shareholders that if you were going to invest in Amazon, you had to accept that it was going to stay anchored to its long-term focus and you had to be on board with this. Needless to say, Amazon has outperformed markets comfortably over the last 20 years. And we can look beyond business leaders too. I mean, I showed you a slide at the start of someone who I believe definitely had that quality of seeing beyond their own lifetime and thinking beyond their own lifetime. Here are two others. We can also see examples of this playing out closer to home. So in recent years, I've been privileged to be able to do a lot of work with Māori business, in particular within collaborative initiatives. I love working in this space, and the reason is simple. The long-term focus is not an add-on, it is baked in. So within traditional business models, when they sit down to plan, normally financial and strategic outcomes are at the front. In Māori business, financial, environmental, and social outcomes are all given equal importance at the start of every planning process. One is not favoured over the other, and as a result of this, long-termism is just baked in. So if we want to see this in practice, we can look at two examples, Ngāi Tahu and Tainui. So in 1997 and 1998, Ngāi Tahu had an asset base of $170 million, Tainui $160 million. Today, they sit at $1.7 billion and $1.5 billion respectively. And they've achieved this while adhering to the long-term framework I just talked about. During this time period, they've reinvested millions of dollars into social and environmental initiatives. And these initiatives are aimed at improving the well-being of our people. And by our people, we mean current and future generations. And this is the hallmark of Māori business. An intergenerational focus on improving the wealth and well-being of our people and planet. Any investment decisions are made with that word in mind, intergenerational. In Te Tai Tokoro, we actually can be proud to have several well-led Māori businesses whose strategies are commercially sound, but include within them social, health, education programs and environmental improvement programs as core components. And this is the difference. Their members or shareholders don't just understand this, they actually demand an adherence to this long-term framework. So when their leaders have to stand up and report their annual results, they are expected to put as equal emphasis on those long-term key components that are non-financial as they are financial. So as a result of this, there isn't pressure on these leaders to sacrifice long-term value for short-term profits. Perhaps our traditional markets, capital markets, could take a leaf from this and behave in the same way. As part of wrapping up this talk, I'd like to share with you my own personal experience of leading a team that I've been proud to work with and be part of for the past 17 years. This was actually the team the scenario I shared with you in scenario 2 earlier on. Although I did take a little bit of license, with the dramatised conflict aspect, so made myself sound good though. So the team that I lead operates in financial services. We provide relationship management services to business and agribusiness customers in Northland. And those who know me have heard me harp on quite a bit about two things that we've stood for over a long period of time. And these are, first and foremost, taking a long-term view in all we do. But given that one of our core activities is financing business, we truly believe that everything we do should put the customer and our interests in the long term at the heart of it. We simply can't afford not to. Now that sometimes means having courageous conversations. Well, so be it, we do it. The second rule is a promise that we never offer a better price to a new client than someone who's already with us. And I know that this sounds obvious and simple as well, but we all know that there are many businesses out there today who are offering new customers way better deals than those that have been with them a long time and have been loyal. We've stuck to this for over a decade. The team believe in it, they're proud of it, and they actually openly tell the market about it. So this model works, and it works because our team has grown from being a small team with very little market presence up here back in 2001 to a large team with a loyal, valued and growing customer base. The reason it works is because everybody wins. So our existing customers who are with us for a long time get consistently competitive pricing over a long period of time because they are never subsidising the discounted deals coming in the front door. As a result of this, we don't churn our client base. And as a result of that, we run a financially viable business model. So we get permission to keep on doing it. A byproduct of this is that we've been able to maintain a stable and high-performing team over a long period of time. So the newest manager in my team has been with us 8 years. That's the newbie. The benefit of this for our customers is that they get to form deeper relationships with their manager and vice versa. Now, don't get me wrong, this has not been easy. So there have been many pressures over the years that could have seen us deviate from this. But the team have stuck to it because A, they're proud of what they've built, and B, they believe in it. So in these 3 examples, or 3 stories, we've got global, national and local examples of how letting a long-term compass can actually produce quite strong results. It can also be applied to all aspects of our life. So when we're making decisions individually, do we take the often travelled easy path, the one that provides a short-term outcome, or do we take the harder one, the one that sometimes requires some short-term pain for that long-term gain? Now, I'm not standing up here today to share with you any revolutionary new concept or something that is brand new. In fact, the debate around short and long-term behaviours has been around for some time. What we do have now, though, is an increasing body of research that is providing evidence to back up what we've intuitively thought to be the case for a long time. Anyone, whether they be an individual, a small or large organisation, who is willing to endure a little bit of short-term pain for long-term gain will outperform over time those that are not. So given that the result of getting this right is better financial, social and environmental outcomes, my question to everyone today is, are you all ready to live and lead for the long term? Thank you.